Hello everyone, I'm Ben Coleman, your anchor host here at Florida Aviation Network at Sun and Fun 2021. Made a little mistake earlier, called it 2012, but we're not. I wish it was. That means I would be 10 years younger. Anyway, we're here at the expo and the fly-in, and it's been a blur. It's been a wonderful week so far. We've talked to a lot of very compelling, very interesting, very professional guests, and today is not going to be any different. As a matter of fact, the highlight of my interviewing sessions here is with a gentleman that I used to know as the Zen pilot, but now we're going to know him as the Peace pilot. It's called Miss Robert DeLaurentis. Robert.
Good to be back, Ben.
It's good. Give me that. That's a fine, peaceful handshake there, Robert. Tell us, Robert. We've been following each other. I think you mentioned this is our third time together. Not in the biblical sense, but we have talked through this, and I've been following you. But I want to hear it from your lips. What has been going on with your Citizen of the World? And develop that a little bit, and I think we've got some B-roll that we might be able to show.
Well, we had a successful circumnavigation of the planet. We intended it would take about 4 months, and it took 8 months and 23 days. I was held up in Spain during the pandemic and was able to make it out and headed over to Sweden. But I
think that was the last time we spoke. You were held up in Spain.
Yeah. And I was actually living in a monastery with monks at Montserrat, and they asked me to leave because only the monks could stay. And I ended up in a couple hotels and eventually on top of a mountain in a place called the Zen Villa. And it was an excellent place to sort of weather the storm and put together, all the things that had happened over the South Pole, because it was a very, very challenging 18.1 hour flight.
Robert, I would like to develop and get into all of your flights, but is there any way that I could kind of follow you? Have you thought about doing a docuseries?
Well, in fact, we have. It started out to be a documentary, and now it's a 12-part docuseries. It's called Peace Pilot to the Ends of the Earth and Beyond. And right now, Discovery and Netflix are looking at it, and we're hoping that the Smithsonian takes interest as well. Well,
I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I knew that the very first interview that we did up at Air Venture, I knew that there's something special going on, and you're working very, very hard for a specific reason, and it's world peace. I mean, it really is what it's all about. And you told me that you've kind of morphed from Zen pilot to Peace pilot. Tell us how that transition has come about and how it has affected your mission. And you have been laser focused on what you're doing, and I admire that. And I hope that we as an industry can use you as a model.
Well, thank you. After 2015, when I did the circumnavigation along the equator, we wanted to go even bigger and better. And we wanted to do what I had written about in my first book called Flying Through Life, which was pursue the impossibly big dream. So after that flight, the next thing was world peace. And it sounds like a lot to even say, but we figured out that the North and South Poles were the two places where peace has always existed, and we wanted to connect those two on a mission of world peace and everyone in between. So in addition to the science that we carried on board, we were focused on trying to help people see the similarities amongst people. And for the docuseries, we interviewed so many different types of people: Zulu Rangers in South Africa, dog sled mushers in Ushuaia, Argentina, ballerinas in Sofia, Bulgaria. And what we found is that everybody wanted the same thing. They wanted health, happiness, peace, family, joy. And it's really what connects us all as humans.
And well put, because we all have some differences, and but I think we have more similarities than we do differences. And how we as a society can pull that out is we are a mere fragment of the demographics in aviation. And the more that you can do to bring that fragment out, to magnify just how important aviation is to our world is really key. And the 12-part docu-series is done through who's doing that?
Well, we have two brilliant cinematographers, Jeremy Lazelle and Kristen Gates. Between them, they have experience with Nat Geo, Animal Planet, History Channel, Bravo, and they've followed me around the planet, probably to 2/3 of the 22 countries that I visited on the 6 continents, and they've been with me every step of the way. And it's really interesting to see it in video. Like I can tell you, that our fuel tanks burst out of Dakar, Senegal on the ground, or I can tell you how stressful it was getting ready to fly to the South Pole. But I think they did a wonderful job of capturing those moments, and I'm excited to share it, with the world.
And there's not enough time in this 22-minute interview to develop all of the. And we bat this phrase around quite a bit in aviation, but hey, what could go wrong? Well, there's a lot that can go wrong, and part of being a professional pilot that I bow to you is you take what you have to work with and you make it work until you can't make it work anymore.
During the preparations for the trip, I had been told that 10%, or during the first 10% of a part's life and the last 10% of its life is when it will typically fail. And that was very true because we had windshields crack, I had an engine that wouldn't restart after a shutdown, we had an environmental system that failed, and fuel controllers that locked up. So, I felt like many of the major systems had failed prior to departure, but I also felt that the plane was telling me what it needed so that we could complete this trip. And before departure, every few days we had a problem, but it was amazing. Once I got on the road and started the trip, the Citizen performed very, very well.
And tell us just a little bit about the Citizen.
The Citizen of the World is a 1983 Turbine Commander 900. It's the Gulfstream version, and it's the faster of the last couple models that they built. It's a little bit lighter. We've modified her in over 50 different ways, and I would say there was nothing that we could have done to make her fly faster, further, or higher than she actually did.
It sounds to me like that aircraft and your activity in that aircraft could have possibly broken some world records.
We definitely broke some world records, and I want to emphasize that it was a mission of many, and that's why I often say we. Some of the records we broke were the longest flight in a twin turboprop of that class, 18.1 hours, first time carrying a NASA wafer scale experiment, first time carrying a plastic particle experiment for Scripps, first time using biofuels over the poles, and the first time using ADS-B in and out over the poles.
Wow.
To name a few.
I know there's got to be many more, but you mentioned something to me before we came on here today that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. It's a mobile STEM lab?
That's right.
Explain that to me, because that's a new concept to me.
This is the Citizen's second life, because the first life was setting the records and collecting the data, but now what we want to do is share the experiments, the STEM education component of the trip with young kids and help inspire them, and aspiring pilots as well. So the great thing is you can see the NASA wafer scale experiment, you can actually touch the sticky tape that we use to collect plastic particles. You can see banners on each of the experiments, and I think it's pretty cool to see a plane that's made history, to be able to touch it. And we've prepared her. Artcraft Paint did a brand new ceramic coating on top of a new paint job for us. We have a new interior, and she's ready for the job.
Does it have that new airplane smell?
Getting the jet fuel smell out of it was the biggest challenge.
From
because
fuel leaks, isn't it?
Yeah. When I landed and the plane made it back to its first 150-hour inspection, we still had 10.5 gallons of Jet A beneath the floorboards.
Wow.
So we got that out, we sprayed it with alcohol, we replaced the upholstery, and then used an ionizer to get the smell out. It smells pretty good now.
So, but there for a while it did not have that new airplane smell.
No, when I would swallow, I could taste the jet fuel in my throat.
Yeah.
I could breathe it, and my sinuses and my eyes would water. But
wow. Robert, you mentioned that and again, you're the out front guy. You're the the buff flight suit. Here I am, but it's got to be a team effort. You can't no one person can put together a trip of that magnitude, and all the different assistances that you've had around various regions of the world.
And that was my greatest inspiration for this trip. We had 95 sponsors and supporters The Florida Aviation Network has helped get the message out. They've been a supporter as well. I have a board of airline pilots and social media experts and someone who was up for the Nobel Prize in Science. We had the best people we could find. And it's fun to be the guy who's actually flying the plane, but it wouldn't have happened without that help and support and love, quite honestly.
Okay, this has been going really smooth and very well scripted and rehearsed, but I'm going to zing you right now,
Okay.
Mr. Peace Pilot. Okay, I'm sitting back on my couch and I'm watching this interview, and I've read the book, but how do I aspire to do something like that? No, but I can't do that. I'm not a millionaire. I don't know a millionaire. How do I aspire to do something as important as Robert DeLaurentis?
I think first you have to identify your passions. And for me, it was spirituality, business, and aviation. And once you identify your passions, then you try and come up with a way to link all of them together. And then you go out into the world and you're the living example of what you believe. And certainly, drawing a team together is probably one of the most important parts, because no one person has all the skills or the resources that they need to pull off something. And making that team strong and complementing each other, in terms of skills that you offer, is a key component. And quite honestly, Ben, I had no idea that this would be as big as it became. I didn't know it would take so much time and so many resources. So where you start may not be where you finish. But I think going out into the world and giving it your best effort, and like I said, being the living example of what you want to see in the world is the most important part.
Well, and you mentioned spiritual, and that's, I got a feeling that people don't fully understand and appreciate a spiritual, and this, I'm not going to get on the sermon, relax, Melody, I'm not getting on my soapbox. But spirituality is, it might be different for each individual of what is so important to them and makes up their aura, if you will. Have you ever met Kermit Weeks?
I have, actually.
Have you
Twice.
spent any time with Kermit?
Just a few minutes.
Not enough. You need to spend some more time with Kermit. And with Kermit, it's all about developing your energy.
Right.
Follow your energy. And Kermit he has some very unique and looks at things, but following your energy, and you have energy. I can imagine you guys, if once you got down into a really philosophical discussion, there's a lot of common points there about the energy. You couldn't accomplish probably a tenth of what you've done if you didn't have the right energy, and pulling people in like Jeremy folks that have helped you, you're part of your team, they feed off your energy and then they get energized. And why can't we do that in the world?
Well, I think what happens is people start vibrating at a higher frequency when they're out doing something positive in the world. Mm-hmm. And then when you're around them, you pick up on that energy and then you're affected as well. So I think when the differences sort of melt away and we see that we have all these things in common, aviation is a great example of that. People love planes, they love to go to air shows, some people like to fly. It has this element of dreaming and floating and being up in the heavens. Mm-hmm. So when we find those common threads, I think it connects us and we can understand how we're all one. And once we're all one and one person is vibrating at a higher frequency, then everybody will as well.
Robert, you do know that our mission here at the Florida Aviation Network is about aviation safety. Now, you have a different perspective of safety, because I don't think you really fully appreciate the term "a problem of a serious nature" unless you're at high altitude and things start selectively dropping off of your aircraft. I'm not dropping off literally, but coming offline. And you start to immediately, the computer in our minds, okay, if something else happens, and if that was to happen, I'm really up the creek. How important is maintenance and safety with the regard to who touches your aircraft, keeping your redundant systems, keeping your spares, your flyaway kit? I'm sure that you don't go launching off in the citizen of the world without just a few, an exciter box. There's some igniter plugs. there's some things that you keep in your toolbox that you would not even think about flying across the ocean.
Well, the concept of mitigation of risk is critical, and it was on the flight. Originally, we had expected it would take 6 months to plan and prepare for the trip, and as we identified additional risks, it got lengthened, and eventually it took 18 months. And everything that you possibly can do to make your flight safer while you're on the ground is when it needs to happen. And certainly I sat in the cockpit of the citizen of the world and thought through some of the risks that I might have to deal with in the air. But the thing that always scared me the most were the risks that I could not anticipate. And one of those, of course, was the global pandemic that hit, when I was over in Europe. So, we train, we take it seriously, we think about the things that can happen and, maybe act out your response in the cockpit. CAPS Aviation in Los Angeles helped me put together my survival bag. And a guy named Tim Nealon, who's a brilliant survival training expert, basically sat me down. We went through multiple training sessions. Eventually I would train in a tank, and they would strap me in, flip the cockpit upside down, submerge it in water, turn out the lights, and you had to find your way out. So I don't know that pilots actually train for survival enough. I mean, we have our training inside the cockpit for insurance reasons, but how much survival training does a pilot really do?
So well put. And just an example, parachutes. You're required under certain conditions to wear a parachute. You and the pilot and the passenger, unless you're flying solo. That's not required. But there's no requirement for the passenger that dons his parachute for the first time to actually know how to use it. So at that point, it could be more of a detriment of not having the training to properly use that parachute. So I don't know. Now I guess I am getting on my soapbox about safety and thinking things through.
You talked about mechanics, and I think that mechanics are such a critical part of flight. And as pilots, we have physical exams that we have to take in the training. I'd love to see some of that happening for mechanics as well. And a lot of mechanics now train to do component replacement, but I think there's a deeper level that can happen, and there's a level of knowledge that can be achieved. And for me, I go to SkyWest Aviation, which is in Texas. I live in California, so I'm willing to fly halfway across the country to get to the mechanics that I trust 100%. So developing a relationship, seeking out these people that are experts, and encouraging them along in their training, I think is really important.
From your perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it reassuring to know that you have your go-to people and you give them a call and say, look, Barney, it's doing this, this, and this. Barney comes back with it. Well, how about that function? What's that do when you do that? I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to go try that right now. You call him, Barney, fixed it. I have no idea why, but it fixed it. All right, call me anytime.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a Barney or a Smitty or somebody that they can go to, their go-to person.
Right.
Or Sherry or Jennifer. We get so wrapped up in this gender of, mechanics are a guy. No, mechanics are people. And it takes a lot of knowledge, understanding of the systems to be an expert. You go to the experts or become an expert, and that way you're able to help troubleshoot when Robert gives you a call saying, hey, it's doing this. How do we either stop it, or is this a problem? No, it'll settle down, Robert. About another 5 or 10 hours, it'll settle down.
Right. Yeah, it's a critical relationship, and maybe one of the first ones that pilots should start to develop, in addition to their instructors and the other people that help them fly. But absolutely, it's a relationship that every pilot should have.
Robert, we've had this discussion before, but I'm going to bring it up again. You have morphed from the Zen pilot to the Peace pilot. And I have discussed with you the ultimate pilot is a pilot that's also a mechanic. Or the ultimate mechanic, which is a mechanic that's also a pilot.
Right.
So the ultimate airman is really what I'm trying to push for. And I encourage all you pilots out there, please dive into your maintenance, learn. You mechanics out there, you say, well, I can't afford to fly. Nah, I don't want to hear that. It's a matter of you set your focus and you do it. But get your mechanics rating if you're a pilot. Pilots, get your mechanics. Mechanics, go out and learn how to fly. And that way, when you finish inspection, you take it around the patch before you let Robert take it around for the first time. I hope he makes it back in one piece. No, that will never happen in a professional operation. Robert, as we wind this down, where do we go to see this docuseries?
Well, you'll find information on it once we sell it at our website, which is pole2poleflight.com, and the 2 is TO. We'll put it out on social media as well. It takes time, and we've got 12 rough cut segments that are ready, for their final editing. So we're hoping very soon.
And I tell you, if anyone's interested that's seeing this or not seeing it, go to the FloridaAviationNetwork.com. Did I say that too fast? FloridaAviationNetwork.com. And you'll see a lot of this and other compelling information on not only this, but other people. Robert, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your interest and support.
And we will. We're watching you.
Okay.
As they say, we're watching you. Ben Coleman here, and we will see you at the next interview here at the Sun and Fun Complex 2021.